Welcome, everyone. I'm Anne Cullen, and I have a special guest with me today, Dr. L, also known as the Parent Whisperer. We are so lucky to have him here talking about the foundations of healthy eating. So, Dr. L, that's obviously not your full name. You're actually Dr. Ali Lankerani. Is that how you pronounce your name?
Ah, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, every
Oh,
day everybody's saying Dr. L, and I'm starting to forget my own name.
well, funnily enough, my dad was a Dr. L as well. So, yeah, it's really an honor to have you here. I really enjoyed speaking on your summit earlier in the year, and the information that you put out and the collaborations that you made happen on that summit were pretty amazing. So I'm really excited to kind of flip roles here and have you as my guest now. So
It
thank
was
you.
it was a pleasure. It was nice having you, and I'm glad to be here. And I thank you for allowing me this opportunity to spread my message out to the world.
Of course, of
So thank
course.
you.
Well, Dr. L, in my working with parents and families and children for the last 30 years or so, healthy eating comes up all the time. And I don't think there's a moment that goes by as a parent where we're not concerned about the health of our children. Um, I'm sure you found the same that this is like for ourselves can be such a big topic and as parents also. So can you tell me a little bit of your story of how how your path has come to this right now?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question, actually. So I'm called Dr. L because I'm a clinical neuroscientist. I had a private practice for 10 years, and I help families who have children with autism spectrum disorders. And of course,
Mhm.
one of the most foundational things that I used to do during private practice was that I actually would make sure that the kid's brain was supported before I would ask of the brain to do something or try to rewire that brain. And this is very essential that for us to understand that if we show up to life and we decide to do something, before we can do that thing, our best friend is our body. And in order for us to be able to achieve what we set out to do, we want to make sure that we support our best friend, the one that actually is going to give us the biggest support, which is our body. And of course, at the center of that is our brain, right? Now,
Yeah.
I'm talking about the brain, but I'll tell you this right off the bat. I actually grew up with ADHD before there was ADHD. So I
Wow.
was called that bright kid that would learn what the teacher was trying to get across in the first 10 minutes of the class and would go ahead and disrupt the remaining 50 minutes of the class. So I apologize to all the teachers out there for all the hardships of people like myself that I've given you. I also will apologize in some form or fashion to parents because I was not an easy child. I was a difficult child, and it was not easy basically raising me. So let's just leave it at that, basically. Now, as I grew up, one of the things that kind of made it more difficult for my parents is I grew up in Iran, and at the time there was the Iran-Iraq War, and there was the revolution. Then came the Iran-Iraq War, all the changes in society that were happening, and as a kid, I don't know any better. I want to go out there, have fun, and play. And with ADHD, I want to do that even more. And I don't want to sit and study, right?
Right.
So, because the environment was set in such a way that you had to be literally the top performer in the country, you had to be in the 1% of academic performers in the country to be able to pass the national university exams and go on to go to the university. And if you didn't, the alternative for you would be to join the service and go to the front
Mhm.
lines. And ever since 9, 10, 11 years of age, we were watching video clips and cartoons and this propaganda about how kids were strapping on grenades and jumping in front of tanks to blow it up and martyring
Wow.
themselves and walking the minefields trying to clear the mines for the people behind them to move forward and help the cause and things like that. So that was the environment, that was the atmosphere.
Wow.
And I wanted to go play, right? And having ADHD, which is a learning disability, does not bode well for you academically performing. Now,
No.
needless to say, I was actually performing. I was repeatedly the number one, number two in my class. But that might not have been enough. I had to be number one in the school and in the
Mm.
county and in the city and in the state and in the country to be able to have that chance, basically. So
Wow.
that gap between my performance and where I had to be filled with my parents' efforts.
Mm.
So I applaud every parent that is out there trying to do right by their kids and trying to get them to lead a full life, despite them being difficult, basically. And
Mm.
long story short, I look at parents as superheroes because the way I look at it is as a kid, when we're growing up, what do superheroes have? Superpowers, right? Parents have this ability to do things that kids are not able to do.
Mhm.
And somehow parents have this knowledge of how the world works that kids are trying to figure out.
Mm.
And then add to that the fact that parents have this undying feeling of responsibility to make sure that their kids get a fair chance at life, just like superheroes do. They always go for the underdog. They always try to do the best to make sure that everybody gets a fair chance, right? And then
Yeah.
the last part is that parents have doubts. The odds are always
Mm.
stacked against the superheroes, right? We are growing up, we learned that we are going to be parents, and we have all these challenges and doubts and fears of whether we're going to succeed or not. And
Yes.
and you're not alone. That's like you were on my summit. You remember one of
Mm.
the things we discovered during the summit, the feedback that the parents were giving us was that, wow, I did not know there was so much support for us out there. That for them to understand that you're not alone out there, that there is plenty of people rooting for you, for the superhero, basically. Now, having said that, if you look at the superheroes, you also realize that Superman had his uncle that said, with knowledge or with power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
And Superman had his aunt, basically. And the Batman had his butler, and the list goes on, basically. So, bottom line, all superheroes have mentors, and
Mm.
you guys as parents need to have your mentors as well. We are there to support you. That's why Anne does what she does, and that's why I do what I do, basically.
Mm.
So going back to my story, what ended up happening, we happened to pretty much win the lottery ticket. My parents moved me from that country 2 weeks before I had to go and serve to the United States, and
Oh,
that's
wow.
where I currently reside. And I basically got this new lease on life where my parents brought me over and said, "We've brought you as far as we could. The rest is up to you."
Mm.
And as wonderful as that opportunity was at that moment, I went into survival mode because the one solid factor of support that I had all of a sudden said, "This is as far as we can go." And I was on my own from that moment on, right?
Mm.
So I had to figure my way in a new country, new system, new language, everything, new culture. And in that process, I went from thriving like I was to surviving.
Yeah.
And this is very, very important that I want to get this across that when we become parents, a lot of times we think in the back of our heads that if we go ahead and we just survive and give everything to our kids and provide everything for our kids so they can thrive, that then we are being good parents. But in that
Mhm.
process, what we are doing, we are teaching, we're leading by example subconsciously that this is how you survive really well. So
Yeah. That's
who do the
huge.
kids, yeah, who do the kids have as a
Yeah.
role model that thrives? So that's basically where the company comes in, role model maker. That we want to make
Mm.
sure that you guys thrive. Because if you thrive, you lead by example for your kids on how to thrive.
And, I can't imagine anything more important on the planet. I mean, we know that raising our children is literally, changing the face of the world. I mean, this is how we change the world, is in our own families. So I was there myself as a parent who thought exactly what you said. As long as my children are thriving, I'll put myself on the back burner. Um, and eventually, I completely burnt out, 100%. And that's why I have that huge, huge goal to make sure that mothers and fathers, parents are supported so that they can do the job of supporting their children. Mm.
Exactly. So that brings me to the next part of my story. And that happened when I was 19 years of age. So shortly, about 4 or 5 years after I came to the country, I went to the doctor, and at 19 years of age, they said, you have high cholesterol. And naturally,
Wow.
my parents, they were trying to do everything they can so that I end up being healthy. So at the time, the remedies were, if you have cholesterol, cholesterol is related to fat, you got to cut out the fat. You got to cut out the cholesterol in your diet. And of course, what did I do as a 19-year-old that is growing and needs calories? Well, I substituted the fat with sugar. So instead of having bacon or eggs or something, I would basically switching to skim milk and frosted flakes and really, sugary snacks that are fat free. And in that process came my new challenge that I was not even aware of. And for 25 years, the problem keep getting worse and worse as I tried different experts and different diets. Now, bear in mind, I'm a physician. I aced my biochemistry. I took nutrition. I took like alternative like supplements and herbal medicine and things like that throughout my undergrad and my medical career. And I went through all of these things, and I'm making recommendations to my patients. Yet somehow I cannot master my own health. And the blood
Mm.
test kept showing up with worse and worse, eventually to a point where when my son was 2 years old and I was getting my blood tests done, I saw that the progression was so bad that if I was to continue on this path, I might not be there to see my son graduate from high school. And here I am, somebody who's dedicated to family, saw my grandparents, have extended families and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, I might not be there for my new kids. So it was a
Mm.
wake-up call. And
That's
I
true.
and I went through a series of doing things, this testing and trial and error based on what I knew and doing the different diets that are out there. And while I was able to lower my cholesterol from 300 plus to less than 180 within 90 days without medication, I realized that that diet was not sustainable.
Mm.
Later on, I also found out that inadvertently, I also caused heart damage. I also created things like panic attacks in myself and things like that. Now, as a physician, I should know better, and yet this trial and error took its toll on me. So
Mm.
I don't want the parents, I don't want anybody out there trial and erroring their nutrition, which is such a foundational piece of supporting your body and your brain and how you show up in the world in such a way. So eventually, about 3 or 4 years ago, I came up with this plan that I ended up deciding, okay, I got to figure out what's right for the brain. And based on my understanding of biochemistry and metabolism and digestion, whatever suits both of these models
Mm.
ends up being one that I adopt basically. So in that process, what I ended up doing was creating this diet for myself that allowed me to finally master my weight, my health, and all the other accumulated problems that I had gathered over the 25 years of battling this thing and trial and error and doing these different things. So that's basically where the story begins for you guys, basically, as the benefactors of that, basically. So one of the things that happens, so these are typically the challenges that people
Mhm.
face when it comes to nutrition. Number one is that they feel that being on top of your nutrition is a chore and it's difficult and takes time, requires more
Mhm.
money, all the not fun stuff, right? But the reality
Definitely.
of it is that eating the right kind of foods is going to save you money, can be fun, can be delicious. Yes, I said that. And so that's the first part of it. The second part is that people think that having to go on some kind of a nutritious meal, they have to avoid entire food groups and never
Yeah.
have fun. The food is dull, all of those things. Again, not true. So we're gonna
Mhm.
bust that misconception as well. And then the last part, which oftentimes becomes a big struggle for people, is they finally decide to make a choice and do something to improve their nutrition and their health. And they try to squeeze their life into their diet. And the problem is
Mhm.
your life is bigger than your diet. Your diet has to fit into your life. So what I mean by that, as soon as you have a family gathering, a
Yeah.
party, you're eating on the go, or there's not enough time, the diet fails
Yeah.
because it cannot fit into your lifestyle, basically. So these are the three challenges that I'm going to give you the tips for today, basically. All right. Any
Well,
questions so far? And I just
that
want to touch base.
yeah, yeah, no, that is amazing. No questions so far. For those of you that happen to be on listening live, I want you to know that you can feel free to ask Dr. L your questions. And I might just give a little bit of a teaser. I believe you have a gift for everybody that sticks around and
Yes.
listens.
I'm going to have people stick around to the end. I have something special for you
Yeah,
guys.
so hold on. And believe me, you do want it. You do want it. So hold on. Um, yeah. So I mean, this sounds like every family's problems solved. So when it comes to food and nutrition, and we're absolutely bombarded, like you say, with all these different options that even if you start with one, you don't know, you might not even know which one to pick. You might not know um, what good information actually is. And what I love most about your story is that you're not just a healthy doctor telling us what to do. You've lived a problematic health history and have been able to fix it. So you're not just preaching to us, telling us how great you've got it and that you've got all the answers. Like you've lived it and learned it as well. So I really appreciate that about your story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you.
Mm.
So to try to explain and go from the challenges that we just talked about into how we can go ahead and step into a proper lifestyle that supports a healthy eating habit, I
Mm.
want you to remember, first of all, that this is based on how your brain functions. So it's top-down approach. If you can support your brain, the brain controls the function of everything else, then it can support everything else.
Yeah.
So everything else kind of cascades from there. Now, in order to do that, these are the three principles. So, and when I come and talk to different people, when I talk to you and I say, well, how's your eating? The typical answer is, I eat pretty good, right? Right? Or, I don't eat too well, or I should eat better, whatever it has. But usually the topic revolves around what the people are eating.
Yeah.
And while that is important, for most of us, we never got training or
Mm.
exposed to having an understanding of how you're supposed to eat and when you're supposed to eat.
Mm.
So when people decide they're going to be healthy, they just basically take one of the many different principles and philosophies that are out there, from being vegan to being keto to everything in between,
Yeah.
and they're like, you know what? I'm going to do whatever this thing says and I'm going to eat whatever this thing says. But you have to understand, number one, human beings are omnivores. What that means, that a big part of our success of being able to be all over this planet and survive is that we can be in any climate and eat anything that's available to us in that climate. So we have Nordic tribes that have no access to plants year round. And
Mm-hmm.
then we have other people that are in the tropics, and for them, it doesn't make sense to risk life and limb to go after prey because there's all these wonderful fruits and vegetables available to them. And
Yeah.
if you catch a prey, odds are there's another predator chasing after you and the prey. So it's not worth it. So different diets, different climates, our bodies have learned to adapt to all of those. And that's part of our success story. So I do
Mm-hmm.
not subscribe to the fact that people should never eat a certain food. I don't believe in that. I think eating should be fun. I think you should be able to eat anything. So if I've got your attention, I'm going to go into the principles now. So the
Yeah.
first principle is that you want to make sure that you separate the fats in the macronutrients. So we have micronutrients and macronutrients, right?
Mm-hmm.
Micronutrients typically are the vitamins and the minerals and the little stuff that you hear in supplements and all these other research that comes out regularly. Macronutrients are the ones that we have known about ever since we were kids. You know, you got to eat your veggies, right? So carbs, fats, and proteins.
Mm-hmm.
So these are your macronutrients. Now, our bodies can process all of them, but you need to separate your carbohydrates from the fats because the processing and the metabolism of these two is very different. And when you mix it together, it becomes very taxing on your body and it takes a long time to
Mm-hmm.
process. So, separating the carbs from the fats is the first principle.
Wow.
The second principle is that as we eat, we turn on this massive machinery of glands and blood flow and digestion and coordination. And all of these things take a lot of resources and starts out cascades of biochemistry in your body, hormones and enzymes that start being secreted into different parts of your body. And those signals tell your body, all right, food is coming in. Let's load it up. Let's store it. So you go into storage mode, basically.
Mm.
And that process takes time from the time that you start eating it to the time where everything's on the shelf. And now that everything's on the shelf, now you're ready to take it off the shelf and start using it as fuel. But for most of us, as we stack everything onto the shelf, new shipment comes in and we go back into storage mode and we store some more. This is why in developed countries, obesity is such an epidemic because we go from storage mode to storage mode to storage
Yeah.
mode. We rarely get the opportunity to actually burn off the fuel that we put into our body. And the
Yeah.
fuel that we burn off in the interim tends to be the most caustic and inflammatory and damaging. And it causes advanced aging and degeneration. So the
Mm.
result of it is we end up with a lot of inflammatory degenerative diseases, such
Mm.
as arthritis,
Yeah.
osteoarthritis, such as cardiovascular disease, autoimmune disorders, and the list goes on and on and on.
Mm.
Anytime you hear irritable or inflammatory or inflammation or pain, think inflammatory, think of what I'm
Mm.
just talking. And of course, the last part of this is the part that most people think about, happens to be what? What we eat. Now, this part is a little bit easier because in every category of fats, carbohydrates, and proteins, there are good ones and then there's bad ones. The good ones are the ones that we need to eat more of, and the bad ones are the ones that we are supposed to eat less of, right? And this is common knowledge. People know that they're supposed to eat their vegetables, right? People know they're supposed to stay away from margarine and have something like olive oil. People
Yeah.
know that soy might not be the best source of protein for you, but let's say mushrooms or or chicken breast might be a better resource for that. So
Mm.
fish for that matter. So
Mm.
just to understand, there's good ones and bad ones. The bad ones tend to increase inflammation. The good ones
Mhm.
tend to drive down inflammation. Now, I'm not saying inflammation is always bad. If you have infection or a broken bone, you need inflammation to heal yourself. But for most of us, we walk around in this chronic state of inflammation that is induced by what we eat and how we eat, and then ultimately when we eat as well. So that's very important. So you have people that say you're supposed to eat 4 to 6 meals a day, right?
Mm.
Eat frequently, eat often. And then you got people that go on water fast for 5 days and they don't eat anything and they swear
Yeah.
by that. Which one is
Yeah.
important? You go by people who say, I'm a vegan, I only eat plant-based foods. Then you have people that basically survive on bacon grease and,
Yes.
prime rib, and they swear by that. So our body is smart, it can adapt. But so long
Mm.
as you apply these three principles, any kind of diet could be used to actually optimize your health. And there lies the secret, basically, right? So
Mm. So, did you see that question here? Would you suggest not having carbs and fats in the same meal? So, she's wondering, how would you
very,
do that?
very good question. So typically what happens is when your body runs on fats, it has certain characteristics. It's designed to do certain things. And when your body runs on carbs, it has a completely different set of
Right.
characteristics. So carbs are good for immediate, explosive movement, performance, things like that. Fats are much better for sustained, prolonged type of activity. You want focus? Do you want your focus to be 5 minutes long? Do you want your focus to be over the course of the entire classroom? Right?
Right.
So that becomes important. And you see how this stuff not only affects you, but it can affect your children and your
Yep.
habits the same way end up affecting the children. That was one of my biggest challenges in private practice when I was trying to support this young child's brain was that parents a lot of times inadvertently through their own lifestyle were getting in the way of their kids' progress. So
Hmm.
uh, try to apply this in your own life and you'll be surprised the effect that you will see in your kids' life before you even had to tell them what to eat or what not to eat. So that's basically it. So
I can
to answer
imagine.
that question, I usually would keep those separate. So I have days where I have carbs and then I have days where I have fats, but I don't mix them. Now, by carbs, I will make a slight um, note to the side note because when we're talking about carbs, Coca-Cola is a carbohydrate and so is celery.
Yep.
And they have different values when it comes to your nutrition. I'm not saying not to have the Coca-Cola, but you want to minimize your exposure to something that causes inflammation that your body doesn't necessarily need, so on and so forth. So you're okay with having celery with, say, peanut butter, but I wouldn't necessarily have Coca-Cola with your prime rib. That's a very bad combination.
Right.
Right?
Super
So
interesting. Yeah. So, can you tell us if you started making some of these changes? I mean, you talked about kind of your 25-year journey. What kind of results are people going to be expecting, or is it too varied to put numbers on what kind of results people might start to have?
I love the question because, we are in a society where things have to happen fast, right? We want to get
Yeah.
results. And realistically, when it comes to the brain, if it doesn't get rewarded, then there's no sense for it to continue doing an activity that wastes energy, right? The beauty of
Mm.
this, remember I mentioned to you, this is a top-down approach. With the program, what ends up happening is if you do this properly, your brain gets rewarded in the process. There's increased focus, mental clarity,
Mm.
endurance, and you're enjoying your foods and you have more time. You literally can have 2 to 3 extra hours per day where you can actually go ahead and devote to productivity. And I will
Mm.
tell you this, your brain can run as much as 4 times more effective and more efficient in performing its tasks. So how many of you are up for that?
Yeah.
So the results, and this is one of the things I love about neurology, because when it comes to nutrition by itself, and let's say we're talking weight loss can take a while for it to happen, especially if you've
Mm.
been eating improperly for 20, 30, 40 years. But the neurological effects are almost instantaneous. So
Right.
as soon as you start eating, within 2 to 3 days, you're going to start noticing differences.
Hmm.
And most of like my program is 6 weeks long, basically. And with most of the people that go through the program, one of the things that happens is not only do they see their weight optimize, their focus improve, their skin and their nails and hair become better. Uh, so you see some of those things, but you also see an improvement in their mood. You can see the variety of foods, like their satisfaction overall with their diet, also tends to
Mm.
improve too. Because
Wow.
their taste buds really adjust and they're like, wow, I really had never realized that this thing tastes as good as it does. But when you're eating the wrong kind of food, you look for different type of stimulations, basically. So,
Mm.
so there's a lot of changes that, in your brain when it happens, you see it throughout the body and throughout your life, basically. And you'll see it in your kids too, their performance in school, you'll see it in their behavior, their socialization skills. It has a deep effect. Many of the stuff that we talk about initially were used for people who had traumatic brain injuries,
Oh.
seizures, epilepsies, things like that. So it actually, I'm not recommending you to treat conditions with it. This is what healthy eating is supposed to be like. Our course is designed to teach you about how your body works and what food does to it so you can make
Mm.
decisions regardless of diet, regardless of circumstance, whatever situation you happen to be. So eat
Mm.
natural foods, you optimize your health and your weight and your looks. And on top of that, you get to enjoy it because eating is one of those things that's designed to be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think so many people listening will have tried multiple things and maybe feel um, a little bit like, nothing else has worked. Like, what I'm hearing about your approach is that this is very much based in what's actually going on in the body. And I think a lot of us listen to people who really they don't have the background to understand things quite the same way that you do. So how much when someone works with you in this, what's your program called, Dr. L?
Program is called Role Model Meal Mastery. It used to be called Mastering Healthy Eating, but then after COVID, a lot of the parents were coming to me and say, you know what, I love the program, but I just need like a little walking stick so that I can get my feet on the ground, gain some traction. Can you give us
Yeah.
some meals? So now I also include 6 months worth of meals so that people kind of understand how it all comes together. But it's a 6 week program, and then we also have the 6 months of meals that we
Oh,
provide
wow.
the recipes and the ingredients for it so that you guys have something to fall back on in case you hit basically a flat spot or have a glitch, basically.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
So how much of the program is just learning about kind of the ins and outs of what's happening in your body versus just the practical kind of application of what you teach?
so the first part of this, I want to emphasize this is not a diet. This is
Yeah.
what you needed to learn growing up, and hopefully your kids will get to learn. I mean, I always get this complaint. I always complain about this, that we never get health education in school and wealth education. This is one of those things that should have been learned
Yeah.
as we grew up, basically. So it's not a diet. It's something that is part of your lifestyle, designed to keep you healthy and optimize
Mm.
for how you show up in life. Usually the program retail, if you were to go ahead and get it at any point, it's 997 US dollars.
Mhm.
Whenever I am on stages, I usually promote it for 695, and on special cases, I actually offer it at 497. I think the summit that you were at, I was offering it at 497 during the summit, basically.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned, you're more than welcome to purchase it at 497. But as I mentioned, I have a special present for people who are actually being active and are on the call today. And that is that our course is beginning in 2 weeks, and I have a few spots available, and I want to gift this to your audience for only $1, basically. So you will get the program, the 6 weeks program. You'll get the video library, you get the Facebook support group, you'll get the 6 months of meals, plus a few other bonuses that I'd be more than glad to go over details with you guys if you choose to sign up. But the first 7 people that actually go ahead, that's how many spots I have left. The first 7 people who decide to apply for this, they can have it for $1. And I provided the link to Anne so she can give you
Mhm.
that link.
Yep.
And there is a promo code to get it for $1, and it's only going to
Yeah.
be effective for basically till Monday, because after that, I'm pretty sure this is going to be full.
Yeah.
And that is GIFT, GIFT, as the promo code. And you can double check me on that, but I believe that is the promo code. So when you go to the link at the bottom, it asks for a code, say GIFT, and you will see it switch and become $1. So
Isn't
congratulations if
it,
you are
it
one.
is incredible. And we do have some listeners on. I've put this link that I've just shown up here on the screen into the comments, so you can just go ahead and click on it, type in that promo code of gift, and it's yours for $1. This is absolutely incredible. I couldn't believe it when I didn't know Dr. L was going to offer this to people on here. So, I mean, talk about amazing.
And you showed up in a big way on our summit. I loved your message and how you supported the family, and this was my way of just giving back, basically. I just wanted to make sure that
Well,
your tribe gets the benefit as well. So,
yeah, lucky listeners, and we've got a couple, a few on there. I can't see all of your names, those of you on, but our what we're trying to do in the world, Dr. L, is so much the same, coming from the same place, and it's just amazing to connect with someone who has not just such a wealth of knowledge, but a wealth of knowledge that's so different and complementary to my own, so that I can share that with all of my followers and clients. So I'm absolutely certain anyone that watches this video is going to understand why I was so excited to talk to you and to be able to bring you. I mean, and you're in Florida, right? So, we're in different hemispheres here.
so
So the beauty of the internet, we've gotten together to be able to present some just amazing information. So even if you haven't been able to grab this $1 deal, that I can't even believe Dr. L is being that generous. This program is going to be well worth being in. And like you say, and my clients, my followers hear me say this all the time, and it's such a cliche, but it's 100% the truth. You must look after yourself, and you really are the model to your children. They're learning far more from what you are doing and how you are looking after yourself, about how to then go and look after themselves, and other people. This is where it all starts, and that's why I love that you're called the role model maker. It just really resonates with me so deeply. Are there any last things that you want to say before I keep rambling on about how amazing you and your program are?
and you're kind. I was going to say 2 things. Number one is a challenge to you.
Okay.
I want to challenge you guys to take me up on this offer and see the change that it can make in your life, not only inside of you, but remember, I mentioned to you that this is a top down, supports your brain approach. So your brain also does a lot of things outside of your body as well. So I want you to take this challenge and see how you show up in the world. And then after you've seen that, I'll talk to you about how you can do this for your kids as well, and
Mm,
watch them blossom and lead full lives and be healthy and
mm.
just be inspired by the full people that they are. Little people, but they're full people that they are. So that's my
Yeah.
challenge. And secondly, I want you to remember this, and this goes back to my TEDx talk, that optimize your brain function and you can optimize humanity's potential. And that's
Mm.
my goal. So thank you.
Such a fan, such a fan. Brilliant message, brilliant information. I'm very appreciative to have you here. And just wondering if there's any last questions of Dr. L before we sign off for today. Make sure you get to the link that I've posted in the comments and grab your gift, the Meal Mastery Program, 6-week program, 6 months of meals, of recipes. Is that what you said? 6 months?
I'm not cooking for the audience, just to be
Oh.
clear. I'm giving you the.
No private chef comes with this program, just to be clear. You
Not
still have to.
after COVID, we might have a retreat. Or we will bring a private chef. I don't know. We'll come up with it.
That would be fantastic. Do you know, I was supposed to come to Florida, to Fort Lauderdale in June for my 48th birthday, and it ended up not happening. Obviously, wasn't quite the right timing. So hopefully we'll make it over, or even better, come to New Zealand. New Zealand needs you. This is a beautiful country. We would love to host you over here. So
Awesome.
awesome. Thank you so much.
My
Okay,
pleasure.
thanks everyone for joining. I'll see you in the program.
Thanks, Anne, and thank you guys for staying with us to the end. I appreciate you.
Thanks.